Easy come, easy go for the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Tampa Bay Lightning answer back, and I don't think anybody's really surprised that a team like the Bolts answered back the way they did, but I do think people are going to be surprised at Toronto's effort. Maybe we'll talk about the refereeing in that game, but we won't be complaining, I promise you that. Leafs, Bolts, let's get after the game breakdown. Series 1-1. I think we knew this was going to 7. Don't forget, either Bolts and Leafs fans are sponsored by BetUS. Head over to betus.com for 125% deposit bonus for first-time players, so you can go ahead and smash your bet next game on the Leafs or the Bolts, whoever you happen to be a fan with. Pro tip, always go with the team you're a fan with. Makes it way more fun. Keep it recreational. Be over the age of majority in your state or province, Canadian or American residents. So what do you want me to tell you in this game that isn't that obvious? This was the Tampa Bay Lightning's game. We've previewed the playoffs like crazy. We talked about the game last time where the Leafs ended up winning. And we said if the Leafs wanted to win this game, they had to play the game with structure on the power play and stay out of the crap. Well, they do the exact opposite. They take 7 penalties. They get 3 power play goals scored on them. So that's the end of the power kill in this game. The Leafs shorthanded do get 1 at the end, but being able to kill these penalties is key. Getting through the Clifford penalty last game gave them massive motivation, but unfortunately they were unable to get through the slew of penalties that they had. And Tampa Bay did exactly what we said Tampa Bay would do. They were going to punch, hook, and bait and play tough hockey and drag the Leafs into the muck with them. And when you're in the muck with the Tampa Bay Lightning, not only are they bigger and badder, but they are very skilled and very comfortable there. So the Bolts start off with Maroon and Corey Perry. And you know what? I didn't really like what Maroon and Corey Perry were doing, not because I don't love Maroon and Corey Perry. I do. Perry's one of my favorite players. I'm sorry, Leafs Nation. Corey Perry is just, I'm drawn to pests. It's the way it goes. In the beginning of the game, I really thought what they were doing wasn't effective. They actually took a couple penalties right off the bat. We saw Corey Perry serve the too many men, and that's a coach's error. And then we saw Pat Maroon get taken to the box for what I consider a bad penalty. You don't want to take roughing as the offensive team in front of the other team's net. 180 feet away from your net is never a good penalty to take. So Maroon takes it. But the unfortunate thing is, with 4 minutes of power play, the #1 power play in the NHL, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they couldn't capitalize on it. And I really was sitting there going, I think this is a big deal. And it did turn out to be a huge deal. If they could capitalize, it would have been big. But just like the Leafs killing off the 5-minute before, the Bolts being able to kill off 2 penalties, visiting against the Leafs' #1 power play, you kind of get a little bit of swagger. And that's exactly what happened to the Bolts. After that swagger, we saw the Leafs trying to push back physically. Giordano ends up getting a holding penalty. I never like holding penalties. They're a terrible penalty to take, no matter what your opinion is of the refs. Holding penalties are not good. I mean, you have to have one hand off your stick in order to take it. Gio takes a holding penalty. Kerfoot takes a holding penalty. And when your best penalty killer in Kerfoot, and maybe it is Marner. I mean, Kerfoot and Marner together is an incredible kill anyway. But when one of your top penalty killers, let's say that so people don't get super uppity on it, when he's in the box, that really puts you at a massive disadvantage, not just being short. So 2 holding calls in order to start the game. And then the third one is a roughing call by Wayne Simmonds. I don't like that either. Like, I am not a fan of the 4th line of the Leafs taking penalties this way. It's not where you want to be. I understand there's a lot of people that think there needs to be pushback, but you don't want to be in the muck with the Bolts. I'm going to die on that hill. I love tough hockey. I love big hits, but you want to play a skill game against the Bolts. I'm all about winning. I'm not all about playing it a certain way. So whatever way you need to do to win is the way you got to do it. And the way the Leafs got to do it is with their power play. Now, quickly for Leafs fans, we'll talk about the reffing. I mean, the one that stands out for me is the Mitch Marner being holed down and tripped. To me, that was a really obvious call that was missed. But here's the deal, Leafs Nation, and I know it's not all of Leafs Nation. The referees can't change the outcome of a game. They can change maybe 2% of it, but 98% of the outcome of the game is controlled by the players. And these referees, I think, are calling the playoffs pretty tight. They're putting guys in the box, but it's hockey. They always miss calls. I don't think I have ever seen a game where I've been happy with what the referees usually do. It's such an opinionated piece. It's just something that, you know, I feel you when you're a home fan, whether you're Bolts or a Leafs fan, you get emotionally fired up because that happens to me when I'm cheering for the Jets. But when you're neutral to it and you look at it, you got to kind of have that, just shrug it off. It is what it is. Keep your feet moving. I mean, Marner drew a penalty right after that. So that's good in the sense. But at the end of the day, the Leafs had 4 minutes power plays they didn't capitalize on. The Bolts penalty kill works, and the power play for the Bolts ends up working, and the momentum switches hugely. The Bolts did what they needed to do. I know Leafs fans are jacked up about last game, so it's traded back and forth. This is actually a huge victory for the Bolts because they have momentum going on to home ice, and the Leafs have now lost home ice advantage. That is because you split the first 2 games at home. The Leafs now have to go into Tampa Bay and take game, and that can be difficult. It's loud building in there. The ice surface is totally different because of the humidity and the weather in Tampa Bay. It's just a different vibe, but hopefully the Leafs get back on their game because tonight it wasn't their game, but this definitely was the Bolts. It was also nice to have Michael Bunting back. I mean, that was a beautiful goal he ends up scoring. The second one, I mean, to make it 2-1, that's a huge play for Matthews. It's a huge play for Marner on their line to have Bunting back. So it's nice to see them fully back together, but I don't think the Leafs skated. I think that was really it. I think the Leafs kind of, I don't know if they were too jacked up or what it was, but frankly, what leads me to this conclusion, and we'll talk about the first 2 goals, but it was the first 2 goals of the Bolts. How do you let Corey Perry get behind you? He's not that fast anymore. Your number 1 pairing in Morgan, Rielly, and Lyubushkin, let Perry behind them on a stretch? I don't know about that. And Corey can still score. Like I said, I love the skill of Corey Perry. He takes a beautiful pass off the skate, but you can't let that guy behind you. That's kind of amateur hour stuff, and that just shows you're not really dialed in and paying attention. And then frankly, the first goal that ends up going in for Victor Hedman, it may be a power play, but how dare you let a goal in after icing the puck with 12 seconds left in the period? You may not like to hear it, but that's just bad defense. And that's great offense by Tampa Bay. I'm not trying to take anything away from it, but you let a defenseman go 200 feet in 12 seconds, get in front of your net alone and score. Really? That's not a good sign in this game. So those were 2 things that I didn't like. I think it kind of signals that the Leafs were off their game. Tampa Bay kind of lived rent-free in their head. But the series is split, and I think we all knew this was going to go to 7 anyway. All right, so the first goal here, Marner does a great job getting it down the ice. You can see the time clock, 17.2 seconds. And this is the first signal that I looked at and went, I think the Leafs may be in trouble today and the Bolts may be on their game. With 12 seconds left, Victor Hedman picks up the puck, and this guy was the absolute MVP, stud of the universe for the Bolts today. Was he on fire? Just an absolute force that the Leafs had no answer for. Now, the first problem for the Leafs here is that last game we saw them stand them up at the line and pressure. Now, and I think it's because the clock is winding down, they turn off the aggressiveness on their penalty kill here, and Victor Hedman is able to walk into the zone free and clear. This is not a typical tactic for the Leafs penalty kill, but you see that Hedman gets to basically glide freely into the zone. That is not like the Leafs. So he gets no strides. I mean, we just saw him glide there. Now he's in the zone. He's in a 1-on-4. There's 8 seconds left. There's no way this should have been a goal. You should have mucked this up at the middle. Hedman ends up dropping the pass or losing the pass due to a good Leafs poke check here, and the Bolts are able to keep it in. But again, this is like you have 4 guys so deep. If you don't let 4 guys in so deep, this doesn't happen. So the Leafs go into a passive penalty kill here, and what you'll see is that the Leafs player is really going to end up attacking that puck this way, and it leaves Hedman open in front of the net. They get aggressive at the wrong time. You wanted to get aggressive at the line. You don't want to get aggressive here. This is also why diamonds and boxes don't work anymore. This is the old school diamond that you'll see. You don't actually want to be in a diamond. What you want to have here is you need to have your other player bumped out into the middle. We call this the T intersection on a penalty kill. You always need to have somebody in the middle here. So even if your guy has bumped up and gotten aggressive, you need to actually bump into this T intersection and almost stack it like an I at this point. But because that doesn't happen, the puck ends up moving down ice like you saw there, and you see 2 players going for it full speed. And again, like, you got to get back here. He was always in no man's land. And I feel like I've picked on Mikeyev a lot in this series for not taking strides before, and he's a well-loved player. He's had a boom end to the season, but this just isn't a good kill by Mikeyev. Like, he's doing nothing on this kill. And I'm not going to say it's completely his fault, but when you're not contributing as a unit and you're just kind of gliding and standing in one place, yeah, I think you deserve to be picked on here, because Mr. Victor Hedman over here, as we know, is all alone, and he gets to put one in against Jack Campbell, and this isn't Campbell's fault. What do you want him to do on this one? Goal number 2 is all speed by Corey Perry. Again here, the fact that Corey Perry, who is right here, he's 150 feet away from the net, and he is 3 lines away for where he's going to receive that pass, ends up dropping it to Victor Hedman. What ends up happening here is that Perry takes the very long skate as fast as humanly possible and is able to spring himself behind the D for a breakaway. The reason I have a problem with this goal is, why can a guy this far back, who is 5 Toronto Maple Leafs in front of him on the right side of the defensive puck, able to spring himself on a breakaway from this spot? Great play by Hedman and great play by Perry. The Leafs, though, like, you kind of let them have it. So we get to see there about 10 seconds, and I can't keep the clips moving. Welcome to copyright land. But there's about 10 seconds there. It feels like a Victor Hedman playing with the puck, and absolutely no forecheck. And the reason you have no forecheck is 2 seconds before that, you have Michael Bunting sticking with Corey Perry. Michael Bunting's job on this one actually isn't to be with Corey Perry. It's to pressure Victor Hedman. The first man in needs to pressure the puck. The fact that he ends up sticking with Corey Perry and then Corey Perry gets behind all of you just goes to show why the first man isn't supposed to do what he's doing here. So it's a broken play by the Leafs. And I know it's a little blurry because it moves so fast, but Hedman is able to make a pass and hit Corey Perry right here. Remember, Michael Bunting was covering him. Bunting ends up going for a change over here, so he lets it go. You got 4 Leafs. They're all behind. You got Morgan Rielly right here. You got Lyubushkin right here. You have 2 Tampa Bay Lightning who got behind 4 Toronto Maple Leafs. Totally broken neutral zone forecheck. This wasn't what they did last game. The Michael Bunting goal started to give me hope here because this is Leafs hockey. Brodie with a beautiful deep pass down to Mitch Marner, to which he takes off his skate and puts it towards Vasilevsky. And then what we see is that puck ends up on Vasilevsky's stick, and we see Auston Matthews showing us how a forecheck is done. This is a beautiful J-hook, and this is a beautiful turnover by Auston Matthews. This is why he's one of the best defensive forwards in the league. If you think this is an offensive play, it's not. The puck isn't on his stick. You're on defense when you're trying to turn the puck over. So Vasilevsky moves the puck over there into the corner. And now what you have is what we're always talking about on this channel. You have a 2-on-1 of pressure. You have Marner and Matthews able to pressure the Tampa Bay defenseman, and they end up turning it over this way. That's why I say this game is always about 2-on-1s. Matthews and Marner continue their path of isolating Tampa Bay, and then a beautiful hit here to turn it over. They end up freezing the defenseman, and Marner's able to get on it after that beautiful stick you just saw there from Auston Matthews. This is a huge individual effort from Matthews, and it is great team positioning by Mitch Marner. You now see the offensive 2-on-1 that was created from a defensive 2-on-1, and the offensive 2-on-1 leads to Michael Bunting's goal. And then you think it's 2-1 and you're back, but an absolutely brutal penalty by Wayne Simmonds puts them down again, and the Tampa Bay power play makes them pay for it again. It was painful. It wasn't a worthwhile penalty. It's never a worthwhile penalty. Have one of your 4th line guys go out there, take a roughing call, especially when you're down 2-1 in a game. That's not what you want to be running. And then you end up getting scored on and it ends up making it 3-1. I'm not going to break down the Kucherov goal because at the end of the day, nothing really happened that went wrong on the Leafs penalty kill or right for the Tampa Bay power play other than Kucherov doing amazing Kucherov things. It was just a beauty snipe. That's what it was. Standard power play, beauty snipe by Kuch. The last one we'll talk about here is the unfortunate turnover by Auston Matthews. He tries to make a nice pass within the zone. It gets caught up, and then you can see right there, beautiful little stick. They're off to the races. This is an awesome example here of Kucherov with the puck. You got Nick Paul, you got Brandon Hagel. What I love is that Hagel, and all goal scorers need to do this. Hagel is a goal scorer. You got to drive the mid lane. So this is a 3-on-2. All Hagel has to do is drive the mid lane. By driving the mid lane, he's going to force both Toronto Maple Leafs defenders to back in. If he doesn't take the mid lane or he glides into the ice, there's a problem. But Hagel's a smart hockey player. He knows exactly what to do, pushes the Leafs defenders back. As soon as they cross the line, you see it. 3 hard strides there by Hagel. I loved it. 1, 2, 3, drive the mid lane. Now he's in between them. That allows Nick Paul to pick up this puck. And now you're in a bit of trouble if you're the defenseman. Someone needs to pick up Hagel. They don't do it. This happens all the time in the NHL. I'm not going to pick on the D for it. It's a typical standard play. Hagel gets 2 more strides forward, and now they're in all kinds of trouble because all Hagel has to do is take it off the stick and ba-boom, it's in the back of the net. Brayden Point ends up scoring the 5th one there, but the 4th one really was the dagger of the game. The Leafs started making a game of it. I mean, Mitch Marner ends up scoring after that, and then you see Alexander Kerfoot scoring shorthanded, but I think the game takeaway is really easy. Bolts fans, Leafs Nation, too many penalties for the Leafs. Great job by the Bolts using physicality and dragging him into a muck. Really good job on special teams by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Victor Hedman leading his team to victory. Absolute X factor in there for the Bolts tonight. Jack Campbell actually had a fine game. I pick on him a lot, but he had an absolutely fine game. Mitch Marner has finally shown up in the playoffs, so that's one good thing to take away here. 2 points again for Mitch Marner, so whatever monkey he had off his back is gone. And I love the fact that Mitch Marner is now kind of shaken off. He's not afraid to play his Mitch Marner style game, which is good. That's what you want. I thought Auston Matthews played pretty good tonight. I thought Michael Bunting played pretty good tonight. But after that, I thought, frankly, the Toronto Maple Leafs defense, I don't think any of them played well tonight. I would not be cheering on any of the 6. Lyubushkin really struggled, in my opinion. He's a good physical guy, but the tough thing about having a physical guy with Morgan Rielly on there, and some of you may disagree with me, but you know, I got an eye for this. He's not a great skater. So I understand everybody in the NHL is a great skater, but he's a little bit of a plotter in my opinion, and he's a little bit slow in my opinion. And by slow, I mean transition, opening his feet and closing his feet. That can be tough when you're playing on a first line pairing. And I mean, he hasn't played a first line role since ever. I mean, he just got paired with an all-star defenseman in Morgan Rielly. Rielly carries him, and we've seen this work in the NHL, right, with Forbert and Drew Doughty. There's a whole bunch of examples over the NHL where elite defenseman pairs with mucker or, you know, at best third line pairing guy, and you go, hey, that's not too bad. All right, this is going to work out because you can spread out guys like Brodie, Muzzin, and Giordano. That's a lot of ice time for him to cover. He had a great game last game, but he got exposed a little bit this game, in my opinion, and that hurt the Leafs. Giordano actually had a pretty good game. The middle 6 of the Leafs, I mean, Kerfoot does Kerfoot things. I'm not ever going to knock Kerfoot, but after that, it kind of feels like it fell off to me. It just wasn't the same team. They weren't closing gaps the same way. They weren't creating 2-on-1s the same way. They weren't using their speed the same way. This feels like a Tampa Bay Lightning team that's veteran, in control of themselves, not worried about their emotions, dragged the worst out of the Leafs, played the best in themselves. The one thing I've noticed about Tampa Bay, though, I'm not a Sergachev fan anymore. Like, Bolts fans, I get he's going to replace McDonough if he hasn't already, but like, he is really out of place in the playoffs, in my opinion. He takes a lot of penalties because he's not skating properly. He makes a lot of bad decisions. He's not a physical player for how big he is. So I understand he's only 23. Feels like he's been in the league forever. But at this point in time, with the amount of time he's had in the NHL under his belt, the more I watch Sergachev, the more I go, you know, you want him on your team, but I don't think you ever want him to be your number 1. I don't know if he'll ever end up being the number 1 or if that's ever the plan, but sometimes he feels like a liability. I'm not a huge Sergachev fan, but I'm going to keep watching him. Just the first 2 games in the playoffs this year, I've been like, not my cup of tea right now. Not playing the way I'd want him to play as a coach. I mean, I'd be pretty upset at those 2 games from Sergachev. That's just me, though. Those are my takeaways from the game. It's 1-1 heading back to Tampa Bay.